Yeah, if I'm thinking about, obviously, when we think about the major AI themes that are going on in Cannes this year, if I could pick just one, it would probably be about the the realization that we don't need AI for the sake of AI, but AI for value and really driving improvements for humans and for their decision-making processes and for the value of brands and advertisers in this space. And so I'm really heartened to see that it's not just, oh, we'll put AI into everything. There's a much stronger focus this year on, well, what value is it bringing in that value chain, and how are people going to have better experiences or lives out of it. When we think about the differences between SEO and GEO, I will say there's more similarities than differences. So I want to start there, which is that it's always about providing value with the content that we produce, that it is useful for not just machines, but for humans. But we're moving away from this world of 10 blue links and kind of people navigating themselves. And people are delegating so much more to LLMs and AI tools than they ever used to, that it's really critical that we're thinking about how we're structuring data, how consistent we are with our data. Because if we know anything, it's that LLMs are robots, they're machines. They can't experience the way humans experience. And so they're going to use a confluence of data to understand the human experience by proxy and provide responses back. And so if I could offer one recommendation for brands, it would be to understand what questions consumers have when they're trying to consider your category or buy your brand or move into that space. And then make sure that your data is structured in a way and consistent across the entire ecosystem, whether that's through your influencers and creator partners, whether that's through, if you're a retail client, on your product detail pages within retailers, to what's happening on brand.com and your product feeds. That consistency of data and consistency of experience that's really granular about exact product details, exact ways of using, customer testimonials and experiences is going to be critical for having visibility in the right way and in a differentiated way for brands in this new kind of GEO landscape. I mean, it's interesting because we've done some studies internally that show a really high correlation between the amount of money we've spent in digital and how that's evolved over 20 years with how undifferentiated brands are becoming in this kind of sea of sameness. And I think it's critical at this inflection point in places like UGC and places like Reddit, where we need to help brands differentiate so that consumers ask the right questions and talk about the brands in a way that is really in line with and congruent with the brand messaging. And so a lot of the stuff that I spend time doing and we work with clients doing is around understanding exactly which questions people want answered. Reddit is a great place to do that because it's about asking essentially the wisdom of the crowds about, how does this product actually work? What's the experience? What are the upsides and downsides? All of those details. And because it's deemed so authentic by the LLMs, because they use it as a proxy for human experience, really driving those conversations in a natural and authentic way is incredibly important. We also know that there's a really good correlation between spending branding money and showing people ads in these community spaces. And so we talk a lot about like igniting communities and driving that spark of inspiration within the right social communities across the board, not even just on Reddit, so that when people go to ask the question, they're asking the right question in a space that brands can own in a differentiated way. So zero-click search and kind of this evolution of the way people use search engines and that turning into answer engines is not even just a 2026 phenomenon. It's been happening and evolving over time for, I'd say, the past 3 years or so. And we've seen it level out at a little bit over 60%. And I think what that means for brands is that those older metrics that used to be proxies for value, that people clicking through to brand.com, spending time on their site, traffic used to be a proxy value for really reaching the right people. And it's no longer the right KPI to optimize towards, because you could have a great branded experience, show exactly the right product details, influence a purchase in a really kind of condensed purchase process, all within an answer engine, whether that's a general use one like ChatGPT or Gemini, or whether that's on a retail platform using like Alexa for shopping or Sparky. All of that could happen in a really great branded way, and you would never see traffic to your website on your own analytics. And so I think that the biggest shift and impact of zero-click search for a lot of marketers is finding new ways to measure the value that you're driving through your visibility and differentiation. The other thing that I will say is that brand.com and the owned site is evolving in the purpose it needs to serve, right? If you're not adding on to the experience that a user gets in the LLM, if you're not providing incremental value or giving someone a reason to click through to your site, then you're not going to benefit from having this owned domain. And we know there's a lot of benefits from having it from an algorithmic perspective. We need to maintain the benefits from a human perspective. And so we're spending a lot of time working with clients across WPP to really understand how AI and LLMs and this evolution is impacting the consumer experience journey, and how brand.coms or destinations need to evolve to add more value in the value chain. So when I think about the new considerations, now that we think about agentic searching and kind of handing over the reins of the searching and recommendation process to agents, a lot of it is about the way that essentially the shelf evolves and the need for better optimization comes to place. So I'll give you an example. Say you are in the CPG space and you're optimizing for the agentic commerce standpoint. In the old world before the internet, it would be about getting your placement in the aisle in the physical store, right? You're part of several hundred SKUs and you need the best placement there. Then we came to the internet more broadly and it became, well, we can see 1,000 SKUs, right? It's about placing in the right place on this broader digital shelf is what we used to call it. And now that we're delegating more of that activity to agents, the shelf is 2 to 5 SKUs. It's 2 to 5 products that are being pre-vetted and pre-recommended to users on very granular and personalized criteria. And so a lot of the things that we think about and that we urge advertisers and marketers to think about is not just what is your product good at and how do we optimize to be one of those 3 to 5, but what is your consumer specifically seeking? And what instructions are they likely to give their LLM or agentic counterpart that will narrow that field of view? And so we do a lot of work looking at not just visibility in LLMs or recommendation in LLMs broadly, but applying audiences for growth and the people you're actually trying to reach and how they may have significantly different questions than more broad category shoppers in this space. When I think about the biggest challenges that brands are facing in this new AI space, I think it's probably twofold. The first being, well, we know what the old measurement looked like. We knew how to measure value in the world before when we were directing a lot of traffic to our websites, when we owned a lot of that data. And now that that data is distributed and living in a bunch of different places, including a lot of it being inside LLMs, those KPIs and what success looks like are really brand new and evolving very quickly. And so whether it's a combination of MMMs or incrementality study or multi-touch attribution, like whatever it is that brands are coming up with, we're seeing a real challenge and they're asking for support in figuring out, well, what does success look like? And how do I get enough data in my organization to answer those questions, not just for my CMO, but really for my CFO, because this is like AI and LLMs are not just a marketing level conversation anymore. In terms of big changes we're seeing, it's really all the way up in the full C-suite. The CFO is asking questions, the CEO is asking questions, and setting KPI and measurement in that space is even more challenging than it was in the past. And then twofold, I said the other piece is really right alongside that, which is you may have the data. Where does it live across your organization, and how do you bring it into one space? And so a lot of our clients who are leaning really far forward in this space are establishing new line items, new budgets, new pieces of parts of their organization that are specifically focused on this. Because if it's everyone's job, then it's no one's job. And they're trying to really evolve their structures internally to speak to this new landscape.